Social media, no matter what platform you're using, if you manage to get somewhere with it, can really, really change your life. Let me show you guys how social media changed my life. In 2022, between 2022 and 2023, at the ages of 23 years old, I had my first six-figure year. I got a comment the other day asking me why do I think my programs and such sold so well. We'll get into that, but let me explain how this happened. So as of right now, as of 2024, well, nearly 2025 on TikTok, I have 5 TikTok accounts of significance. I'm actually growing a 6th that's about to get monetized, but these are the 5 that are already monetized. First of all, we've got Cayle PT, which has got 449,000 followers. Technically, I did have more than that, but I have neglected the hell out of this account for the best part of 2 years because I've been prioritizing everything else. Like, I've probably posted less than 20 times this year to that account, whereas I post 20 times a day to some of the others. Cayle Talks, which was my original vlogging account, my original gaming account, but then I made another one because I'm a little bit addicted to this process, which I then made Cayle Vlogs, which is currently sat at actually, that's not even up to date anymore. It's currently at like 169,000, but 168,000 as of this image. Then if we come down to here, I have 2 more accounts. Both of these are just dedicated gaming accounts. We've got Cayle Plays on 39,000 and more Cayle Plays on 33,000. Cumulatively, across my various different platforms, across the TikToks, if we then include Instagram, I think we don't even actually have to include my YouTube followings, I have crossed a cumulative 1 million followers, which is pretty mental. And sometimes people ask, what's the crossover between those? Like, is it really 1 million if the same person follows you on 5 different accounts? Honestly, the amount of people that do that, especially because of TikTok, is very, very low. Like, if you look at the demographics that I have on TikTok versus YouTube, for example, they are vastly different. It is incredibly difficult to get somebody from TikTok to follow you on YouTube. That's why, for example, this is a good example. My TikTok Cayle Grows account, so the TikTok version of this YouTube channel you guys are watching right now, has got about 8,500 followers right now, whereas I've got about 820 on here. So it's hard to even get 1 in 10 people to move across. People don't move. Like, even if I was to make I can make a video that gets 100,000 views. I'd be lucky if that got me 10 new subscribers. People don't move. They don't like moving. But either way, it doesn't matter about all the various different accounts, because at the time that I made that 6 figures, the only account that I had was Cayle PT, which was my original fitness account. This is the first thing I ever did on social media was fitness. Maybe another video idea, if you guys would like to see it, is I could do a video about how I got started on social media versus just how to actually succeed. Because those two things are not necessarily the same things. You learn a lot of lessons. A lot of your first success is usually kind of a little bit accidental, and that's why a lot of people say it's luck. But then once you make it happen another 5 or 6 times, then it's less luck and more repeatable actions that can achieve predictable outcomes. Also, if you guys haven't already, if you could subscribe to this channel, because a good 30-40% of the viewers that see this won't have done, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Trying to get to 1,000 here. So, how did I make that 100,000 with a TikTok account when at the time in 2020, Jesus Christ, you didn't get paid directly through your views at the time. You just didn't, nothing significant, nothing that mattered. It wasn't the creator rewards program that we have now or the creativity program beta that we had last year. In 2022, you had the creator fund, and anyone that's ever seen that knows that no one made money from the creator fund. That was just pennies per day. So being a personal trainer, this was my first thing, right? I can't actually find my original online coaching form. I don't online coach anymore because I pivoted, basically. I have always followed where my passions lay, and I really wanted to grow the gaming stuff, and in my efforts to grow the gaming stuff, I neglected the fitness stuff, the content side of it anyway, and yeah, anyway, this was my application form for my online coaching a couple of years ago. This wasn't my original one, because if you scroll down, this was when I charged £130 a month. I started at £100 a month. Now, something that dictates pricing in services like this is your demand. I only ever had a peak of 30 clients. I never wanted to go above 30 clients a month, ever, because I liked having a good work-life balance, and that was a nice balance for me. Most online coaches I know of will happily get up to 100 clients a month, because then Monday to Friday they can do 20 check-ins per day. 100, right? So 3.5 times more than I would have peaked at. But check this out. Charging £130 a month, yeah? I had 138 people apply and be in the waiting list, because that's what this is. This is the application form. It's a waiting list because people come in quicker than they leave, and once you hit your capacity, then you have to have a waiting list. That's just the whole thing. But with the amount of followers that I had, when I was charging £100, that waiting list was much bigger. That's what dictates pricing with things like this, is typically supply and demand. To the point where I know that dudes with the same amount of followers as me that were charging £400 a month in an effort to, again, just meet supply and demand and get their services priced accurately. Because if you can only take on 30 people and you've got 140 people waiting for you, the smart, logical move from a business decision is increase your prices, because then that'll knock down the amount of people that can afford it. Then you'll still be able to keep your 30 people, but you'll be charging more for it. Supply and demand. Yeah? So let's just do some maths first of all, right? So we'll go 130 times 30. So at the time, when I was full at 30 clients, paying £130 a month, I were making $3,900 per month from that, and that's 46,800 right there. But that wasn't where the life-changing money was, because as my social media continued to grow, it was a case of, how do I continue to monetize that following? Because again, I didn't want to keep charging more, because I don't understand why it's worth that, you know? I couldn't justify doubling it to try to halve the wait list, because I'm giving the same service, you know? And with a limit of 30 people per month and more people trying to apply than are leaving, it was like, well, what do I do now? So I created a one-off online, one-off product that people could buy, a fitness program, and I put a stupid amount of hours into this. I traveled to as many gyms around the country as I could to cover as many different pieces of equipment in as many gyms as I could, so that when I created this, it's not even just a program. So at the time, if you were to buy a program from somebody with a following on TikTok on fitness, generally what you would get is you would get an Excel spreadsheet with a grid of exercises, sets and reps. That is not what mine are. Mine are, that you can still get them today, check the link in my bio. They come as a 100-page ebook, and there are like 5 different variations upon it. You choose the one that is applicable to you in terms of how many days per week you'd like to train. So 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a couple of varieties of the 6-day one. I didn't know that there was a limit on how much you could put in a PDF until I hit it. There's a 100-page limit on a PDF, and that's why there are 100 pages. There'd have been more. A couple of the ebooks are slightly different from one another because I had to jimmy the pages around because of the fact that I could only have 100 pages. And I released those at £24.99 a piece, I believe. Now let me show you how well those did, shall we? So, in the first month of releasing, so April 6th to May 6th, I was very particular with the day they went live because of, new tax year and all that. In the first month, they did £33,000. And I was like, oh my God, what? I could never have expected how well they did. So to go back to that comment that asks, why do I think they sold so well? I think it's because I released them at just the perfect time. I already had years of making videos, years of people trusting in me because I'd got 400,000 followers by that point. I know that I had 400,000 followers before I ever sold a product. A lot of people get into social media and they're selling a product on day one. I had made tens of thousands of videos without ever pushing anything on anyone besides online coaching, and that was something that people could choose to apply to. And to this day, it's a case of no one's forcing you to buy anything. You can just watch the videos, you know? So I think I've released them at the perfect peak of my relevancy, because again, this was years ago. I'm old. In fitness social media world, especially on TikTok, it is a young man's game. I'm 26. The majority of the current fitness influencers are 18 to 21. And I've been in that game since 2020. That's 5 years in a few months. So it's some of these current influencers that are 18, when I began, they were 13. So I'm an old man. And again, I knew this going into social media. You should never get into social media thinking it's forever. So for example, when I showed my mother that figure because it blew her mind, because the most she's ever earned in a year is 20k. You guys should have heard my life story a million times at this point. It blew her mind, but she can't get her head around, because she's just not that sort of person, that isn't every month. That isn't okay, you now make £33,000 a month. It's no, I made £33,000 that month. That is how being self-employed often works, is that you will have different varying amounts. Now, this is the figure that it made after its first year, so April 2022 to April 2023. £88,000. So between this and the online coaching, we'd have made what? 120k, something like that? It's interesting because 2 years prior to that, working at Tesco, I was making £300 a month. I was being judged by just about everybody I'd ever met because I was a grown adult working part-time at a supermarket for years. Do you know how many times I'd had the conversation with someone at Tesco where they go, oh, you're just here because you're at uni then? Which is code for, you don't want to work here your whole life, do you? The whole purpose of this account is to motivate people that were in the same position as life as me, people that didn't have a lot, people that didn't have prospects, people that didn't go to uni or didn't do well at things, people who want to make something of themselves with their own ability versus things handed to them or qualifications that they gain through education or whatever. Or even just, I don't know, not even just that, but like I'm not even trying to say everybody has to be self-employed, because quite often I look at what my partner does. She's got a very well-paying 9 to 5 and I'm like, I'd kind of love to swap a lot of the time, because at 5 p.m. she's done for the day. And something else to factor in is this probably wasn't everything either, because you've got to factor in that sponsors pay me a salary per month as well, and there's some commission in there. The commission's never very much, but there is commission in there. And realistically, I probably could have made more, but there's always been things that I've slacked on when it comes to social media. In my entire history of being a social media person, so like nearly half a decade, right, I have done 2 sponsored posts. Like, I know that I'm sponsored ongoing by my protein, but in terms of like one-off sponsored posts, because one-off sponsored posts are a hell of a lot more common than ongoing relationship sponsorships. But I've had an ongoing relationship sponsorship with my protein for years now. But in terms of one-off sponsored posts where like a company approaches me to talk about whatever it is they are selling, I've only done 2. And one of them was literally like 2 days ago. And that in and of itself could bring in a few tens of thousands of pounds more a year if you did enough of them, or if you charge enough for them. And if you've got the viewership, you can. Did I make that much in my year after that, 23 to 2024? No, of course not, because you can't expect something to keep selling as well as it did on day one. That's why every company on the planet releases the same thing in a new skin every year. I didn't. A lot of social media people that do fitness for a living, they'll release a new program every year, and I don't understand how they do it, because realistically the things that they said in that original program will still hold true, and nothing has changed because human biology hasn't ever changed. So I don't understand how they can release a different program every year and sell it back to the same people. Because I could release a new program now, 3-4 years later, whatever it is, but I just couldn't do that because of the fact that I know I'd be saying about the same things, and it'd be selling it to the same people again. It'd make me money, but I can't. So the same programs are still available in the bio, and they're as relevant now as they ever were. In case anybody's wondering, I don't really ever talk about the programs too much. And like I said, I really relaxed the amount of fitness content that I make over the last few years. Like I've barely done any. And they still do between £500 and £700 a month on average, even now. There's just passive income, people filtering through the website and buying them. Maybe they stumble across old videos, that sort of thing. So if you want to learn how to grow your social medias and make something of the things that you're posting and do similar to what I've done, stick around, because I do a lot of videos about that sort of thing.